Nobody who watched the life and legend of Wyatt Earp knew how quietly its cast would disappear. 7 of these 8 are dead. A deputy lies under a Texas tree. No grave exists for the doctor who appeared in 68 episodes. One man is still alive at 90. First on the call sheet is a man who did not marry until he was 81 years old and who held the ceremony inside a cemetery. Hugh O'Brian wed Virginia Barber at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in 2006. She was 54. They spent their honeymoon studying philosophy at Oxford. On screen, he was Wyatt Earp, the unsmiling, milk-drinking marshal in the black hat he demanded. Born Hugh Charles Cramp in Rochester, New York, he enlisted in the Marine Corps at 17 and was described ever after as the youngest drill instructor in the history of the Corps. After the war, he intended to become a lawyer. Yale had accepted him for the autumn of 1947. Then he went to watch a girlfriend rehearse a Somerset Maugham play. The leading man failed to appear, and the director asked him to read the lines. The director was Ida Lupino. He got the part, the reviews were strong, and an agent offered him a contract. The program printed his name as Hugh Crape. He decided on the spot that he would not spend his life being called Huge Crape, so he took his mother's family name, O'Brien. The printer misspelled that too. He kept it. Here is what almost nobody knew while they watched. The consultant who recommended O'Brien for the role was Stewart and Lake, a writer who had actually met the real Wyatt Earp and whose 1931 biography of him supplied nearly everything the series believed. Lake later admitted that the book was heavily fictionalized. The 12-inch buntline special that O'Brien carried, and that triggered a toy craze across America, has no credible evidence behind it. Wyatt Earp himself stood accused at various points of horse theft, of criminal assault, and of fixing fights. 6 years of television built an upright man who never existed. O'Brien went looking for the real one. He drove to Colma, California, where Wyatt Earp lies in a Jewish cemetery, because his wife Josie came from that community and buried him among her people. So many locals turned out to watch that O'Brien described the scene afterward with something close to bewilderment. The whole town had come to see Wyatt Earp visit Wyatt Earp's tombstone. Hollywood gave him an Emmy nomination in 1957 and very little afterward. 2 decades on, John Wayne, who was his friend, shot him dead in the final scene of The Shootist, and O'Brien counted that an honor. In 1958, O'Brien spent time in Africa with Albert Schweitzer. He came home and started a leadership program for 10th graders. By the time he died, it had put more than 470,000 students through it. On the morning of September 5, 2016, he died peacefully of natural causes at his home in Beverly Hills, aged 91. The announcement did not come from a studio or an agent. It came from the foundation, which called him a hero and meant it. He lies at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, in the same company of gardens where he was married. Wyatt Earp was a lawman assembled from a book its own author confessed he had invented. Hugh O'Brian spent 58 years trying to be worth the imitation. Second on this list is a man who received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on December 12, 1997, and who was dead 13 days later on Christmas morning. Denver Pyle had worked for 50 years before the industry got around to him. On the series, he was Ben Thompson, a gunfighter who shook your hand at noon and shot you by supper. Bethune, Colorado, was a farm town, and his father farmed it. His brother Willis went on to animate for Walt Disney. Denver went to Colorado State, quit to become a drummer, and when that failed, he worked the oil fields of Oklahoma and Texas and the shrimp boats of the Gulf. In 1940, his sister found him a job as a page at NBC. When the war came, he riveted airframes at Lockheed. He served in that war. The details were never firmly established and he did not discuss them. Afterward, he went back to the rivets, until an actor friend pushed him into a play, and the play went well enough that he stayed. What happened next has no parallel among the men in this video. Within a few years of leaving the Andy Griffith Show, Pyle began quietly buying oil wells that everybody else had written off, at a moment when crude sold for $2.15 a barrel. New extraction methods and the crisis of 1973 drove the price past $46. By 1981, he had made far more money from oil than from 3 decades of acting. Asked why he still took roles, he said that acting provided the cash flow for oil speculation, and besides that, he liked acting. His first marriage to Marilee Carpenter gave him 2 sons and ended in 1970. David went into the Navy and rose to Master Chief Petty Officer. Tony went into business. For 10 years, he ran a fishing tournament in Lamar County, Texas, named for the character everybody loved him as, and it raised more than $160,000 for children there. The tournament outlived him and is running still. In 1983, Denver married Tippi Johnston, and that one held until lung cancer took him in Burbank on Christmas Day, 1997, at 77. They buried him at Forreston Cemetery in Ellis County, Texas, in his wife's family plot, beside her parents. The grave has no marker. Cemetery staff have said the family left it bare on purpose because he was famous. Visitors are told to find the Johnston headstone and look at the patch of dirt beside it. Uncle Jesse was the most recognizable grandfather in America. Denver Pyle lies in a Texas field under nothing at all. One of these 8 men is still breathing this morning, and he walked away from a starring role at 23 to go and count other people's money. Third, and the only living soul in this entire video, is a man who was offered his own television series in 1959 and turned it down. Mason Allen Dinehart III was 23. He walked away from acting and never came back. On the show, he was Bat Masterson, Earp's young apprentice, the boy the marshal pointedly insisted on calling Mr. Masterson. He was 19 when they cast him, too young to legally order a drink in California, and in his first substantial episode, the writers put in a joke about his failure to grow a mustache. His father was the character actor Alan Dinehart. In 1936, the year Mason was born, his father legally changed his own name to Mason Allen Dinehart, so that the newborn could be Mason Allen Dinehart III, which confused everyone permanently, because the father's first son from an earlier marriage was already called Allen Dinehart Jr. Heart disease killed the father in 1944. Mason was 8. At 12, he was already working. In Columbia's 1948 Superman serial, he played Clark Kent as a boy, which makes him the first actor ever to portray Superman on film. Nobody remembers that either. When he refused the spin-off, ABC gave Bat Masterson to Gene Barry over at NBC, and Barry is the man America Pictures. Dinehart went into securities brokerage in 1960. Since 1991, he has been retained more than 700 times as an expert witness in securities litigation, testifying for investors ruined by dishonest brokers, including 3 of the people Bernie Madoff stole from. Walking into a courtroom in front of a jury, he has said, means you are on stage every minute. He married 4 times and has 7 surviving children. A son, Scott, died in 2010 after an emergency hip operation. Since 1984, his consuming passion has been Olympic pin collecting, and he introduces himself as a collector before he mentions the Westerns. He says the friendships in Hollywood began and ended fast, usually lasting only until a production wrapped. Pin traders, by his account, are totally honest. Nobody comes up with fakes, and everybody simply tells you what a thing is worth. Bat Masterson was a young man being taught to become somebody. Mason Dinehart is 90 years old in San Ramon, California, and he became somebody else. Fourth is a man who lost every tooth in his head to an explosion aboard an aircraft carrier in the South Pacific. Douglas Fowley wore false ones for the remaining 54 years of his life and posed with them out for photographers. He played Doc Holliday, the drunk, sardonic gambler who broke the law behind Earp's back to keep his friend breathing. Daniel Vincent Fowley grew up in the Bronx, went to a military academy, drifted west, studied at Los Angeles City College, and worked as a singing waiter. His screen debut came in 1933 opposite Spencer Tracy. Yes. Over the next 65 years, he appeared in more than 240 films and was never the star of one. Gangsters, cowboys, crooked officials, a man on crutches, a poker player. His most famous performance is Roscoe Dexter, the frantic director in Singin' in the Rain, trying to drag a silent film star through her first talking picture, and almost nobody who loves that film could tell you his name. Television found a use for him late. For 26 episodes, he was Grandpa Andrew Hanks on Pistols and Petticoats, patriarch of a household of gun-toting women who plainly did not need him. Andy Griffith once cast him as a hobo who refused the sheriff's offer of honest work and walked out of Mayberry unbothered. 7 marriages, 6 of them went quickly. The 7th, to Jean Louise Paschal in 1961, lasted 37 years and outlived everything else about him. Among his 5 children was a son by the actress Shelby Payne, a boy named Kim, who grew up to produce records and who died of bladder cancer in 2015 at 75. Fowley died on May 21, 1998, at the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills, California. That is the home the industry built for the people it worked for half a century and never made rich. He was 86, 9 days short of his 87th birthday. His grave is at Laurel Cemetery in Murrieta, in Riverside County, California. Doc Holliday coughed blood and drank himself toward the grave. Douglas Fowley played him with a mouthful of porcelain the Pacific had cost him. 5th is the man whose name the show refused to print. Across 6 seasons, Damian O'Flynn appeared in roughly 68 episodes of the life and legend of Wyatt Earp, more than anyone in the cast except 3 men. His name was left off the credits most of the time. He was Judge Tobin in Kansas and Dr. Goodfellow in Tombstone, deciding first who was guilty and later who lived. The insult compounds when you learn what the credits did print. Douglas Fowley was repeatedly listed as Doc Fabrique in episodes he did not appear in. Somebody in that production office was capable of crediting a man who was absent, while ignoring a man who was there. O'Flynn had begun on the stage in Omaha, tried New York, and reached Los Angeles in 1936. He made his screen debut opposite Bette Davis in Marked Woman the following year, then freelanced for Warner Brothers and for RKO, never once under contract to a studio that would protect him. During the Second World War, in uniform, he was cast alongside other serving actors in Winged Victory. He never married. No children ever came. When he retired in 1969, he gave his money to public libraries and to state parks, chaired his local Red Cross and Boy Scout chapters, taught voice at the Pasadena Playhouse, and served as the celebrity spokesman for Boston Beans. Screen Actors Guild counted him a member for 4 decades. Actors' Equity made him an honorary one. Whatever the industry withheld from him, he seems never to have withheld anything from it, and he went on supporting the fund that cared for old actors long after the credits had stopped bothering with his name. He died in Los Angeles on August 8, 1982 at 75. No cause was ever recorded. There is a memorial page for him on Find a Grave, and it names no cemetery because none is known. Somebody has left a photo request on that page asking any volunteer nearby to go and photograph the headstone. Nobody can fill it. 44 years have passed and the request is still sitting there, open. Dr. Goodfellow spent 6 years deciding who would survive. Damian O'Flynn left no wife, no child, and no ground where a person can stand and say that he is here. If one detail from this video follows you home, let it be that one. Tell me in the comments whether a man who worked 6 years without his name on the screen deserves a marker. 6th belongs to a mechanical engineer who sold a ghost story to Weird Tales magazine in August of 1927 and was filed by editors who never met him among the publication's lady writers because his first name was Terva. Trevor Bardette played Newman Clanton, called Old Man Clanton, Earp's permanent enemy, soft-voiced and entirely certain of his own respectability. Terva Gaston Hubbard was born in Nashville, Arkansas. His parents divorced when he was small, and he went to California with his widowed mother who cooked for a living. He graduated from Oregon State University in 1925 with a degree in mechanical engineering and earned a Master of Science at Northwestern. By 1930, he was acting in New York. 5 years after that, he had abandoned the theater entirely and was gold mining in Mexico. Hollywood got him in 1937 and kept him for 33 years. Between 1938 and 1940 alone, he made roughly 33 pictures, among them Jezebel, Marie Antoinette, Gone with the Wind, and The Grapes of Wrath. Watch any of them and try to find him. He is in and out before your eye catches up. Across his whole career, he accumulated more than 170 films and some 72 television appearances, playing rustlers and gangsters and Nazi spies, and he was never physically imposing. He did it with his eyes and with a soft voice that hardened without warning. Robert Mitchum's father in Thunder Road was his. So were Rustlers on Lassie, on Cheyenne, on Bonanza, on Gunsmoke, and once memorably on The Rebel. On June 14, 1928, in Biggs R County, Texas, he married Dorothy Virginia Chandler. That marriage ran 49 years and ended only when he did. Bardette retired in 1970 and bought a ranch in Green Valley, Arizona, the state where the real Clantons lived and died. He died on that ranch on November 28, 1977, at 75. The cause was never publicly disclosed. His body was cremated, and no cemetery, no niche, no plot, and no scattering site appears in any public record anywhere. The historical Old Man Clanton never faced the Earps at all. Mexican cowboys killed him in Guadalupe Canyon before the gunfight at the OK Corral ever happened. Trevor Bardette died 100 televised deaths in a feud he never reached, and then he was burned and left nowhere. Seventh is the boy his classmates voted the most bashful in the Santa Fe High School class of 1935. Paul Brinegar repaired radios to feed himself while he tried to become an actor. On the series, he was James Kelly, the mayor of Dodge City, grizzled and faintly indignant across 33 episodes. His father farmed. The family moved from Tucumcari to Alamogordo, then to Las Cruces, then to Santa Fe, where a shy boy discovered the school stage. He went to Pasadena Junior College and studied drama and literature and art. While helping out at a small theater, he met an actress named Shirley, and a year later they were married. Nothing about the courtship was ever written down beyond that, which is the way he seems to have wanted it. Hollywood cast him in more than 100 Western films between 1946 and 1994. His screen career began in a Western and ended in one, and there was almost nothing else in between. 7 seasons of Rawhide made him George Washington Wishbone, the cattle drive cook, snapping at a young Clint Eastwood over a pot. The part was a second draft of one he had already played in a 1958 picture called Cattle Empire that the series was built upon, and it fit him so exactly that people who never learned his name learned Wishbones. Lancer made him Jelly Hoskins. He poured drinks in High Plains Drifter. Matt Houston borrowed him in the 80s for a cowboy named Lamar Pettibone. His final appearance came in 1994 as a stagecoach driver in Maverick. That same year, at 76, he stood beside Hugh O'Brian on a Tombstone street one last time for a television film that stitched new footage into colorized scenes from their old show. Then he retired. Emphysema killed him in Los Angeles on March 27, 1995, at 77. The Utter McKinley Funeral Home cremated him, and his ashes were scattered and no one wrote down where. Dog Kelly ran Dodge City and made sure everybody heard him. The most bashful boy in Santa Fe spent 48 years as the loudest man on the trail. One name remains, and his grave takes 86 paces to find. Subscribe before we walk them. Last on this call sheet is a man who came to Hollywood in 1955 hoping to sing in musicals. Nobody ever let him. Morgan Woodward played Shotgun Gibbs, Earp's deputy, and Shadow, harder and stiller than anything the writing ever asked of him. Thomas Morgan Woodward was the third of 5 sons of a doctor in Fort Worth, raised in Arlington, Texas. He earned a pilot's license young. Flying carried him into the Army Air Corps during the Second World War, and Korea recalled him to the Military Air Transport Command. Music filled whatever the sky left over. There was a barbershop quartet, a dance band, and a radio program of his own. He took a degree in corporate finance, minored in music and drama, and enrolled at the University of Texas Law School before abandoning it for California. What Hollywood gave him instead of songs was a face, and 40 years of using that face to frighten people. He holds a record that will never be broken, because the show is gone. Across 20 years of Gunsmoke, Woodward appeared in 19 episodes as 16 different men, more than any other actor in the history of the series. 12 episodes of Wagon Train, 8 of Bonanza, 2 of Star Trek, as 2 separate characters, one of them the most unhinged starship captain the franchise ever produced. 55 episodes of Dallas as Punk Anderson. And in 1967, he put on a pair of mirrored sunglasses, spoke not one line of dialogue, and became Boss Godfrey in Cool Hand Luke, the man with no eyes. In 2010, he endowed a film studies fund at the University of Texas at Arlington. Woodward died in Paso Robles, California, on February 22, 2019, at 93. The cause was not made public. They took him home to Arlington Cemetery in Tarrant County, Texas, to the Woodward family plot in the older section, where the cemetery has posted no section markers at all. The directions left for anyone who wants to stand there are these. Go to the top of Section A. From the tree in the corner, walk 86 paces west back down the road you came in on. The grave will be on your right. Boss Godfrey never said a word and terrified a generation. Morgan Woodward came west to sing. Glendale holds the marshal. Murrieta holds his doctor. A Texas field holds a man with no name on his grave, and California Air holds the rest of them.